So I have here my list of favorite stretches and mobility work to get me positioned for overhead squatting, benching, all the stuff that I need to kind of position myself better so that I don't hurt myself, and that way my joints are more flexible and supple. This took me about 40 minutes to do, and I realize that people don't do that much stretching, but this is good to do if you're having a deload day or your off day. And I just want to show you what I do for someone who's very stiff. Get into an overhead squat position. Alright, so I'm going over my mobility routine for getting ready to squat. I'm setting up this box here so that I can stretch out my external rotators. And because I also have tight adductors, inner thigh muscles, I usually get a pretty good stretch in those inner thigh muscles. And I just sit there and then I adjust in different positions so that I can get kind of a different area of my external rotators. That way when I squat, I can really push those knees out, open up those hips, and activate those glutes. I'm just testing to see my improvement. I tend to get a really good change when I do that. Now to kind of work on my upright position and make sure my lower back doesn't hyperextend when I squat, deadlift, and whatnot. I really open up my hip by pulling my hip flexor, having the band attached to some planted device or some anchored device. I'm just using this light band here, really just stretching up the hip flexor. When I push my head down, I find that I get a little bit more of a stretch in the psoas and the deep hip flexors. I'll try to lean up and put my hand above my head so that way I can kind of tilt, in this case to my left side, to open up my all those hip openers, those hip flexors, and just really stretch it out. So I always like to retest to see how much it's improving, and as far as what I'm doing, making sure that there's actually some improvement with what I'm doing, so that way I know what to eliminate if I don't have a lot of time. So now this is kind of my biggest area because my hamstrings are very tight, and I've been working on this for some time. You can see that the band is pulling my femur bone, my upper leg back, trying to improve my hip flexion, trying to improve that space between my torso and my front of my upper leg, and I'm just kind of flexing and bending my knee so that way I can kind of push that hip back, get that hamstring to stretch, but also allow that hip capsule or that femur bone to kind of roll, glide, and slide inside the hip bone. And usually after that I get much deeper into the stretch. I usually get basically a full squat. My butt does wink, but I do get a pretty good deep position after doing that. And then now I'm going to work on my inner thighs. When I roll out my inner thighs, you're going to notice that I kind of internally rotate my leg, so that way I can kind of get more of my sartorius, one of the adductors, flexors of the front of the thigh. And that's really important because there's a lot of tight spots in there as well that prevent my knees from going out and for me to activate my hips and glutes. Now, to help myself with the overhead squat position, I start to try to peel my shoulder blade, and what I mean by that is I'm just trying to get all the tissues around my shoulder blade, starting at the top and the first rib, and just kind of mobilizing my my arm as I kind of press in the right spot. If you see, I push my hips up so that way I can mobilize that position, and then I kind of get my lats and my upper tricep, or my long head of my triceps, so that way I can get a better overhead position. And what I try to do is I just find that spot that's really tight and I just press on it really hard, and then I try to move my arm as I kind of grind right through it. And here I'm rolling out my chest. I found this roller here from Anthony Crisco, who it's called the Fascinator. It's his foam roller and his learning program. The name escapes me right now, but really good stuff. It'll be in the notes in my YouTube video. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to put my body weight on my chest and the front of my delt, my shoulders, and just really mash those tissues up so that way I can create some flexibility. I find that when I do this, I get a lot of bang for buck flexibility because my chest is super tight because I love the bench press and I love to do chest. And I find that it really makes a big difference. Like here I'm squatting with a stick, trying to do an overhead squat. I get a huge butt wink because my lats and hamstrings are still very, very tight, but I feel pretty strong. I still feel pretty tight. and I'm doing much better than I have been prior to doing this mobility routine. And now the moment of truth. Overhead squat with a 45-pound barbell. Look at that, going down. That might not look very impressive to a lot of people, but for someone who's stiff and tight as me, that's not something I can really do a whole lot because my hips, hamstrings, adductors
So
are
that
super
mobility
tight. My lats are
routine
super
took
tight.
me about 40 minutes to do. Took a while. I had some time in between clients and I wanted to work on some of my tissues, stretch and roll and just open up my hips. I was feeling quite tight in my lower back. I suffer from a lot of lower back issues that come and go based on what I'm training or how I'm training, which prevents me from doing a lot of different things when I want to train really hard. And what I try to do is if I'm doing squats or if I'm doing deadlifts, I will kind of mobilize differently, and I'll just take pieces of what I did today to improve my positions. Because a lot of the time, it takes a lot of time to do this, and most people don't have the time. So I try to pick realistically 2 or 3 things and really mobilize those positions. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due. I learned all this stuff from Kelly Starrett, mobilitywod.com. So you got to go check his stuff out. His stuff is awesome. If you're a fitness nerd like me, you're definitely going to love his stuff. I just wanted to show you kind of what I use from what I learned from Kelly Starrett's videos. And it works amazing. It works great. I mean, you see me overhead squatting. I mean, I could not do that before. And even before I was not been able to drop my butt below my knees. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment for me. And this stuff really works. So that's just a shout out to Kelly Starrett. So you want to check his stuff out. But again, like what I try to do is when I teach a client and I want to coach them to kind of work on their flexibility and foam rolling and trying to work on their tissues and have them have a daily maintenance program, what I try to do is I try to pick 1 to 2 things for them to work on a regular basis. Every day, whenever they have time. I show them a lot of different things, but sometimes you just got to go and do it. I'm going to be running a class here at the gym. It's going to be called Roll and Release, and we're going to teach you how to foam roll and stretch and just mobilize positions so that you get better flexibility, prevent your chance of injury. So here at UFC Gym, but I hope you enjoyed my video.